I always believed that grief was something you experienced alone, quietly, privately, respectfully. I believed funerals were sacred, a place where truth settled like dust and nothing else mattered but memories. But that belief shattered the day my husband died. And a stranger walked into the room holding a child who looked exactly like him. V had been married for 28 years. 28 years of building a life together, brick by brick. A home, a family. Routines so familiar they felt permanent, like the sunrise. We were a unit, a team. His death was sudden, a heart attack on a Wednesday morning while he was making coffee. 1 minute he was standing at the kitchen counter, complaining about the price of gas. The next he was gone. Just like that, everything I thought was stable, everything I had built my world upon, disappeared into thin air. The days leading up to the funeral were a blur of phone calls and arrangements. It felt like I was moving through a thick fog, each action mechanical, disconnected from the storm of emotions raging inside me. At the funeral, the room was filled with faces I knew, and faces I didn't. Friends, co-workers, distant relatives, all offering condolences that blurred into meaningless echoes. Their words were kind, but they couldn't penetrate the wall of numbness I had built around myself. I stood by the casket, one hand resting on the polished wood, holding on to the final, tangible piece of the life we had shared. I felt like an actor in a play I never auditioned for. Amen. The door at the back of the room opened. A woman I had never seen before stepped in, dressed entirely in black. She looked hesitant, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Behind her stood a young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old. His face was pale, his eyes wide and hollow with a grief that seemed too big for his small frame. My gaze was drawn to him immediately. Something about him pulled the air from my lungs. He had my husband's exact eyes. The same deep blue, the same almond shape, the same stubborn arch in his eyebrows that I had looked into every day for nearly 3 decades. Even the way he nervously fidgeted with the cuff of his shirt, twisting the fabric between his fingers, it was identical, a carbon copy, a ghost of the man lying in the casket. The low hum of conversation in the room fell silent. Every head turned. The woman's voice trembled as she spoke, not to me, but to the room at large. Her words hung in the heavy air. He was my son's father. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Mourning turned into chaos. The air crackled with shock and speculation. People stared at me, their faces a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity, waiting for a reaction, waiting for me to scream or faint or fall apart. But I couldn't move. I felt frozen in time. My hands went cold. My heartbeat pounded in my throat, a frantic drum against my ribs. She explained, her voice quiet but desperate, that they had been together for nearly a decade, a whole other life running parallel to mine. He had been supporting them financially, visiting them, being a father to this boy. He had promised her he would leave me when the time was right. But the time never came. Instead, he had been living 2 lives, telling 2 stories, building 2 separate futures that both collapsed the moment his heart stopped beating. She said she wasn't there for money or attention. She wasn't there to cause a scene. She simply wanted the boy to say goodbye to his father. My world, which had already been fractured by his death, completely shattered. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was almost surreal. This man I had loved, this man I had built my entire adult life with, was a stranger. The boy, guided by his mother's hand on his shoulder, walked slowly toward the casket. His small shoes were silent on the carpet. He stood on his tiptoes to see over the edge and touch the dark wood with trembling hands. In a voice so small it was almost a thought, he whispered, "I hope you keep your promise in heaven." And that was the moment I broke. Not when I learned of the affair, not when I saw the living, breathing evidence of his betrayal standing in front of me, but when I saw a child grieving a father he never truly had, a father who had made him a promise he couldn't keep even in life. My husband hadn't just betrayed me, he had betrayed us both. He had left behind 2 broken families. Days later, while sorting through the mountain of his belongings, I found a box tucked away in the back of his closet. Inside, beneath old photos and forgotten trinkets, was a letter he had written but never sent. It wasn't addressed to me. It was to the boy. It read, "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. You were my son, and you deserved better. One day, I hope you'll understand. Think was slightly smeared, as if from a tear. I realized then that forgiveness is not always about mercy sometimes. It is about release. Releasing the anger, the hatred, the need for revenge. It's about letting go so you don't drown. So, I met with the woman privately. There were no accusations, no yelling. Just two women sitting across from each other, united by the same lie. I told her I didn't blame her. We were both victims of a man who couldn't bring himself to tell the truth. And I set aside a significant part of the life insurance for the child. It wasn't out of generosity or pity. It was because he was my husband's son, and he deserved a chance at a life that wasn't built from secrets and broken promises. Sir, people ask me why I didn't fight, why I didn't destroy them out of rage, why I didn't drag them through court. The truth is simple. When everything is already broken, when your life has been reduced to rubble, the only thing left to save is yourself. You can't rebuild the past, but you can build a new future. And that's what I'm doing now, rebuilding a life where the truth is the foundation, not the wreckage. It's a slow process, but for the first time in a long time, the ground beneath my feet feels solid. Thank you for listening.